Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are, for this Work Unleashed conversation with Souheil Badran, Chief Operating Officer from Northwestern Mutual. We're delighted to have Souheil here to have a conversation with Anisha Vaswani, Corporate CIO at Box, and of course, all of you who are joining live to ask questions and to hear the story of technology, business, and transformation at Northwestern Mutual. And we'll be taking questions from those of you on this call right now. You can use the Q&A feature, which is in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom. Please use that to ask questions. It just makes it easier for us to manage the queue of questions and to see when they've been asked. So put them in the Q&A feature. And so I will be sort of facilitating this conversation along with Anisha, jumping in if there are questions that seem relevant at the time and making sure that we kind of get them into the thread of the conversation. And then we will have time at the end to address any that we don't get to. So please use the Q&A. If you have any issues, you can use the chat feature to try to reach us. There's a few boxers on the line as well who will try to respond. But really the Q&A is the best place to submit your questions so that we can manage that effectively. So with that, I'd like to introduce Anisha and have you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Ian. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. As Ian mentioned, my name is Anisha Vaswani. I'm the Corporate CIO here at Box. And I'm pleased to host this episode of our Work Unleashed series. So we launched this series with the advent of COVID, really to kind of talk about how businesses and to talk to business and technology leaders to understand how we're responding to this world where we've been thrust into working remotely in a distributed fashion, and how's technology helping businesses continue to move forward and thrive in this environment. So I'm super excited this morning to welcome Souheil Badran, the COO of Northwestern Mutual, to this conversation. Souheil, thank you so very much for taking the time this morning to join us. And maybe we can kick it off with a brief introduction of yourself, your background, your career, what kind of brought you to your current role as the CEO at Northwestern Mutual.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and hosting me, and thanks for the participants for joining this morning or this afternoon's session, depending on where you are. So as Anisha mentioned, my name is Souheil Badran. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Northwestern Mutual. I've been here for 19 months, although it feels shorter since I haven't been in my office in a few months, very close to my team, unfortunately, due to the circumstances. But just a little bit of background. I joined the company again back in January of 2019. My career throughout has been in financial services, primarily focused on the technology functions. My most recent role was the president of the Americas for Ant Financial, which was part of the Alibaba Group, a large Chinese company. So at Northwestern Mutual as EVP and COO, my team is really accountable for the insurance and investment operations of the company, which include our new business, risk and investment, client services, policy benefits. In addition, I wear a corporate hat, which is responsible for the company's center of excellence around enterprise operational efficiencies and performance, something that we'll discuss and becoming more apparent, especially in today's environment. I think the question was kind of what attracted me to the career of finance. Yeah. And the way I joke about it is I like following the money trail. And I like to know how money is made and how money gets moved around in a legal way, of course. I've always enjoyed working on ideas that really change industries. Again, you think about the work that you're doing at Box, that's a great example of it. But also one that puts all the participants on a level playing field. I like the ability to provide that technology, whether it's technology around financial services or others, that are also influencing the direction around financial inclusion, but really with technology as a driver. Because if you think about financial services and the industry today, it really was not necessarily built for the many, it was built for the few, and we like to change that around a little bit as an industry. We haven't really done enough to simplify and make it easy for the consumers to manage their money, plan for the future, You've got some companies that promote kind of an investment-only mentality, a 401k type mentality. So we feel at Northwestern Mutual, which is a 160-plus-year-old company, that as consumers, many of us are overloaded with incomplete advice. And that the gap really creates anxiety that affects the way we plan, affects our health, our happiness, and around our financial security. So I feel pretty good about kind of the way we're headed, and especially how insurance itself plays a big role in that financial security.
Great. Well, you mentioned Northwestern Mutual is an old company, 100-plus-year-old company. I always think of the quiet company, the ad campaign. But maybe you can tell our audience and our listeners a little bit more about Northwestern Mutual, maybe something they may not know about that might surprise them.
That's a great question. It's funny. So I've been a client of Northwestern Mutual since 1994. I'd like to say this, as I wish I was there from day one, but that makes me really, really old. I'm not that old. It has been known as a quiet company. If you look at our ads in the past, it really was a quiet company and was primarily known for insurance, although we carry both what we call the risk portfolio, which is our insurance products, but also our investment portfolio. And with the focus and increase on technology over the last 5 or 6 years primarily, don't get me wrong, technology has always been a part, but I think over the last 5, 6 years, we really doubled down on our technology. And we've taken a different approach on looking outside in as well as an inside out approach. So when we start looking at the impact of technology, the startups that are out there in the market and the impact that they would have on our industry, we also focus on the overall need on a better customer experience and consumer experience. So we really formalize our technology and our innovation programs, and we changed the way we worked, and we threaded this kind of innovative and agile shift throughout the company, not to overdwell on agile as a method of doing it, but really is how can we as a 106-year-old company change towards a agile methodology in the way we think, not just the way we act. So we've been working to transform the company, our experience as related to our financial security, not just from a consumer perspective, but the way that our field and our omnichannel experience works together to create really a leading digital experience. So I think what would be surprising to most is that nearly half of our workforce, and if you think about our workforce, what we call our home office, which is about 6,000 people strong, half of them plus are actually technology-focused individuals and talent. And that really focuses and showcases the critical role that technology plays in our company. So the way I'd like to think about it, this is something I picked up, working closely with Alibaba and a great founder by the name of Jack Ma, is rather than thinking about what we do as fintech, it's think of it as TechFin, which is really technology driving and helping drive some of these digital services.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a great movement to that. Very similar to you. I was listening to the CTO of Goldman Sachs, and he made the same comment, which is the workforce composition is flipped in terms of number of traders versus number of technologies in the firm. So that's exactly what it is. So let's talk about that in terms of the biggest changes you've seen in the industry, in financial services in general, in terms of technology or innovation, and sort of your perspective on that.
I think you just hit on it. Larger companies who do a good job of listening to their consumers, their client, their distribution, and keeping an eye on what else is happening in the industry, it really has shaped us, right? So we've evolved our company-wide strategy to maintain a long-time focus on our exclusive distribution. What that really means for everyone's benefit is the way we go to market today. You can't just come to our website and decide I want to buy a term policy or a whole life policy. We have an exclusive distribution that is 6,000 people strong, plus all their supporting functions in their back office. So our financial advisors and our products and services are coupled with that distinctive client experience, and it's really powered by digital that our customers want and deserve. So in short, we believe in the power of the human plus digital approach and that omni-channel experience. And that strategy was really comprehensive. It's more than just deploying technology and saying, we have a gap to fill. It was really about changing the mindset about it and being willing to adapt earlier, and kind of the methodology of try fast and fail fast and see what works best. So having that ability to take more risks without really compromising security and the user or service aspect of it, and building the new skills is what helped us. So, as we think about the future, it requires us to continue to remove the silos that inhibit that change and reimagine and reinvent the way we think about it. So it's that continuous motion of trying, testing, being able to, declare success, but as well as being able to declare failure, not because somebody didn't do their job, but it just didn't hit the note that we were all aiming for. So let's try something new. So we do have a vision to solve for that timely need of financial security in a way that is innovative and relevant to the way we all live today, and more importantly, to the way that our kids really are going to experience that service moving forward.
Yeah. I think you've alluded to some aspects of this already, but things like democratization of access to financial services, a seamless omni-channel experience. But maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of over the past 2 years since you've been there, what has been the digital and business strategy for Northwestern Mutual? Kind of what are your focus and priority areas?
Yeah, a couple of things I would say. Again, especially now with the current environment, right? I think a year ago is very different than now. And luckily, I'm still under your umbrella of 2 years. But obviously, a lot has changed. And the current environment really underscores the importance of enabling digital and virtual experiences that give our clients and advisors access to what they need and what they're looking for. So, and in a sense, if I were to compare Northwestern Mutual to Box, or I was on a session with Aaron as well as the CEO of Slack and Zoom. I think this was about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, your companies have really grown in a digital environment, right? We've had to shift to a digital environment. And so we're taking some of these learnings to say, how did you do it? Obviously, I wouldn't have been on the call if I didn't think I was learning something there. Managing my content from anywhere in the world through any device in a secure fashion is, why we partner with companies like ourselves. So over the last couple of years, I would say, we've had the strategy. We always looked at it as a 4 to 6 quarter strategy. We've got the 3 to 5 years. That's great. But we always know a 5-year strategy is always going to be a little bit squishy. So we really tend to focus on directionally, here's where we're going. But from an execution, operational standpoint, this is where we want to be. What that means for me and my team specifically is digital was really a key component of it. As an enterprise that is licensed in all of the states, you still had some states that took a little bit longer to adapt digital solutions, New York being one of them. So with the advent of COVID and the last, I would say since March, the states themselves have realized that the expediting the digital aspect of digital signatures, online health questionnaires, the ability to do things remotely is really key to the safety of their constituents, right? For us, that is something that we thought about, we started executing on, but in some areas weren't able to really roll out as fast as we want. So if I look at the last couple of years, specifically the last 6 months, we have been able to expedite that digital journey in a lot faster fashion. The other part that I would focus on is, again, I mentioned it earlier, is that consumers sometimes are overwhelmed by the amount of financial planning information, that choices that are available. Technology alone, again, especially in the last 4 to 5 months, doesn't really help you make the right decisions. So we tried to make it a little bit less confusing, and this is where we married our digital plus human touch omni-channel experience to take that approach versus kind of a robo-advisor approach only. So building that digital best client experience, I guess, and working with our advisors is really, that's ongoing focus for us. And that's really part of the strategy for our long-term commitment for both our advisors and our clients.
Great. I think you alluded to this, but maybe you can speak, especially with your CEO lens and especially a technology-focused CEO like yourself. How do you think about working with technology partners like Box, and how do they fit into your strategy?
It's funny. Again, I've looked at some of the archives in the 160-year-old journey that we've had. If I look at it, the vision itself hasn't changed, right? It really is around delivering financial security to our clients, to our advisors, so they can live their best life by choice. So as business and business leaders on my team and others of my peers across the company, really needed to figure out the best way to stay true to that vision and mission. So as we progress as not just an organization, but as a company, and we're companies, again, like Box, again, not to be a promoter of Box, although we are users, full disclosure, but
and we appreciate that. Thank you.
No, but that's true. Those who know me in the call know that I'm, talking from the heart here. These companies have really helped us stay true to that mission. We worried more about how can we deliver the service versus taking what is publicly available today, in a sense, off the shelf and leveraging that to drive our mission and vision. So in my role, technology is critical for how we are driving our strategy forward. Innovation is part of it, and innovation doesn't always have to come from within, right? You don't have to always build it yourselves, because you're really wasting a lot of time. You have to leverage best of breed. And for us at Northwestern Mutual, this has allowed us to completely transform the landscape and the experience that we deliver for both our clients and advisors. So I mentioned it earlier. As a world traveler, I'm originally from Lebanon. Now I can be remote and still access my same documents without having to take a USB token with me, without having to take my actual laptop with me, as long as I'm doing it in a secure way. We know that innovation itself and the way we run our business wouldn't really be possible without the tools that we are using today, such as Box.
Right. Yeah. And just with my IT practitioner's hat on, not my Box hat on necessarily, I concur. Box is the first company I work for that is so young and so digital native, but I completely see and understand the pain of like the amount of time you spend just keeping services up, delivering technology, trying to innovate at the same pace. That's really hard to do in today's world. You're much better off leveraging best of breed services that innovate at a pace that's, much faster than you could do. And that's certainly, a technology strategy we employ internally at Box for how we build our own services and deliver them to Boxers and our businesses globally. But it's super interesting to hear from a 160-year-old company, and certainly understand the pain of trying to do all of that yourself. So
now, full disclosure, there was a cloud 160 years ago, but I think you can just look at it, not touch it or feel it. And I was thinking about the discussion coming into this webinar, and that is, if you think about how things have changed, right? Again, I'm probably a little bit older than you, hopefully. But I remember the days of mainframes where our storage consisted of taking tapes off the mainframe and storing them in a warehouse somewhere else, right? So we've come a very long way, yes, and a much more convenient way.
Agreed. I'm not that much. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Sorry. We have quite a few questions, so I thought maybe we could jump in with one or two.
Sounds great.
So we don't leave them all to the end. So we've got a question here from Brian asking, what technology are you using for that omnichannel experience to help clients make decisions?
I think it's a combination, really, if I think about it from both the kind of the advisor side and then our client advocacy team, which is our support services side, right? One is, and I'm not going to mention all the vendors that we use, but obviously you have to have that CRM solution that's driving that. Again, that's not something that we've built internally. If you look at our technology in terms of how we go from a desktop experience to a phone experience to a mobile experience, while the technology and the business domain knowledge has been built internally, the tools themselves are external in nature. So we don't really take a lot of time kind of rebuilding that infrastructure. We have, over the last few years with our infrastructure team, gone on a migration journey We still use mainframes, full disclosure. We still have COBOL programmers, but we have moved some of the new components as we're thinking about this strategy, that 3 to 5 year strategy, leveraging things like AWS in terms of the kind of cloud and cloud storage and tools like that. Internally, again, some of the CEOs that you had on your call a couple of days ago, or a couple of weeks ago, sorry, Zoom and Slack, those are all things and tools that our internal teams love to use and have become part of everyday life in our environment.
Thanks. And then I think one more question, there are more here, but one that would be good to tee up now would be from Sunil. He's asking, can you please share some insights into what has worked in changing mindset and culture and what hasn't, i.e. an example of fail fast? What did you learn from it and implement?
Yeah, I think you've got to set direction at the top, right? And you have to be convinced that it is the right journey that we need to be embarking on. Because I can tell you one thing, it's not cheap, right? So what you have to do is set that direction, have the right leaders in place. I think that's a key component that we tend to forget sometimes. People look at the C-suite and say, all right, they're setting directions, but who's ultimately responsible for execution? We own it as accountable executives, but really it's having the right team around the table that's going to help with that execution. So setting that journey and really eliminating the silos, we've done it in a couple of different ways. It's easy to use the word agile. It's easy to use the word centers of excellence. What we've done is created an operating model where it's more horizontal than it was siloed in the past. And that has created that collaboration. So I'll give you an example. I like to personalize some of the things. A few years ago, if I was looking at my client services team as COO, we pretty much had my directs in the room. Today, I've expanded that to include our technology team, our HR team, our communication team, just to ensure that our message isn't just for my client advocacy team. It really can resonate across and sounds self-serving, but on the other hand, I'm also listening and hearing to what's happening in technology, because it's easy to say, and this is something, a lesson learned, Brian, it's easy to think about your function without truly taking the time to understand the impact on other functions. So if we're running an initiative, I can say, yeah, I'm approving it. Let's run full force ahead. But without taking the time to understand, well, if I say yes, my team may say, okay, let's run fast, but what is the impact on others, such as technology and our technology partners? What is the impact on change management? So I would say that was one where, in an effort to run fast, we actually had to walk, then run, to understand the impact on other organizations and what that means to them.
Great. Ian, any other questions?
Thanks. I think that's it for now.
Great.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to go to the COVID question then, because you got to ask this, which is sort of, as a COO, what was your approach to responding to the COVID crisis, and how has that changed or evolved as the pandemic has evolved? It's certainly been longer and continued to sort of evolve. I mean, we were just talking before we started the call of the rollback in California where we are. So how have you responded to the crisis, and how are you continuing to respond?
Yeah, I've heard of COVID. So look, I think our business strategy from the get-go has been kind of my team's guiding force. And, it's easy, again, because I'm your kind of presenter today. I also want to give credit to the other groups, right? It's not just the CEO's responsibility. We've done it as a team, from the CEO and the direct report. So if you think about our HR team, our facilities team, our chief information officer, our internal IT structures. But really, from the get-go, the strategy has been our guiding force, which has acted as a foundation on how we're assessing these challenges that have been presented primarily since January, when we started really looking at it, once we understood what was kind of happening within the US, to March, when we pulled the trigger on March 13th. It was really a ready, set, go. And the best way to describe it is, we were not caught off guard. So we have what we call a IDRT, either team, infectious disease and environmental risk team. It actually was in place since 2009, and that's a cross-functional team that takes a look at what's happening, researching pandemics, understanding the impact of it. But even that team, no one really thought that this was really going to be a global pandemic that impacts us the way that we are, kind of impacted the way we did today, or what we have today. So the way to think about it is, March 13th, we made the decision that our 6,000 employees are going to be working from home. And if you think about our facilities, our two primary ones are New York and the Milwaukee area. So Friday, we made the call, but over the weekend on Monday, we gave the teams the opportunity to come in and sign up. If you need two screens at home, you can sign up for it. You can take it home. So my stress level as CEO on between that kind of Friday to that Monday and Tuesday, on a scale of 1 to 10, was probably 15.
Yeah.
I think probably got maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night. But again, having the right leaders in place gave me that assurance. And by Wednesday, it was back to that 6 or 7. So that was that initial phase. The second phase where we had to keep an eye on is, if I look at my career personally, this is my old norm. I've always worked remote, and I've always had access to technologies to work remote. We had to really focus on our teams. And so we started doing skip level meetings, skip level discussions to ensure that teams who have families at home, especially younger children with schools being gone remote, that they were able to handle the pressure. The great news is nobody missed a beat. And that's easy to say that, people stayed focused on their job, but you've got to have that empathy to your teams and really give them the guidance to take time off, to say that if you need a couple hours to take care of a doctor's appointment, and if you have 2 working parents, and where one can't cover for the other, where I feel very proud is the teams themselves were able to handle and manage some of that scheduling, for example, between themselves. So I can call you, Anisha, and say, look, between 2 and 4, I've got a doctor's appointment. I've really got to go. Would you be able to cover for me, and I'll take your additional shift? So they were able to handle it. The key learnings is let the teams run their roles, let the team leaders really manage appropriately, be a sounding voice or board and enabler for those teams, because that's one thing that I would say that's really worked well for us in kind of where we are today.
Yeah. What was some of the operational impacts or challenges that you had to deal with, especially given you have a lot of customer-facing, client-facing roles, right, when COVID hit, and then some tips, tricks, or things that you guys did to really make sure those operations continued smoothly to keep the workforce?
I'll answer this in a couple of ways. One is our digital journey really played out really well. Again, I mentioned the 4 and 6 quarter plan. We had to really adapt and figure out in our roadmap, what can we expedite and move to the front of the roadmap. So if you look at the way that our advisors go to market today, a lot of it was face-to-face, or what we call knee-to-knee, sitting across from somebody, listening to their whole story, understanding what's important for them, whether it's, the retirement phase, on the insurance phase, on the legacy side, and how that ties to their financial security and financial future. So the adoption of digital technologies like we're using today, with Zoom, for example, really got expedited. On the other hand, because it was easy to find somebody at home, they weren't traveling, by the way, that worked out really well, and business continues to do well. On the other hand, on the operational side, some of our network offices, the ones in New York, for example, they had to close. So sending all the policies directly to the advisor, and then the advisor giving it to the client, we actually expedited that and working very closely hand in hand with our advisors to make sure that that policy gets sent directly to our client and they're able to sign digitally. So that work, while yes, it is cumbersome, we were able to really turn on a dime because we had the capability, but the need to do it actually helped expedite how we flipped the switch to move faster. So I would say as leaders, listen to your teams, really take the time to roll up the sleeves and understand the environment that we're living in, because you have to have an adaptive mindset, and that helps you kind of lead the pack and lead into what we think is a new normal moving forward. The other part that we did was, as clients were facing financial difficulty, we've all seen the unemployment rates, we've seen the impact on some of our clients, is be cognizant of that. I mean, you cannot be a stiff environment, otherwise you will not survive, and it's easy for clients to switch. So we're able to work with our advisors, with our clients who, especially the ones who are experiencing financial challenges, to extend them loan against their policy, to be able to extend a grace period for their premiums, depending on the state that they were living in as well. And we're able to really work closely to educate our clients not to make rash decisions that may impact our financial or their financial security moving forward. So again, kind of a multi-threaded answer, Anisha, but really everything working kind of hand in hand and being threaded to offer ultimately what's good for our clients and our financial advisors.
Yeah, that's great.
We have a couple of questions here that might be good to bring up now, in particular around this COVID discussion. One from Adam. You spoke a couple of times about the customer experience. How have your customers reacted to the altered support model brought on by COVID?
Great question, Adam. Again, ties into some things that I talked about initially, depending on the client, of course. What we saw, for example, in March and April, in the height, if you will, where nobody knew kind of what the impact is going to be, you start to hear about unemployment. We saw a huge increase in our investment call center. People were calling in to figure out, okay, how does my portfolio fit? Is there going to be an impact because of COVID? How are the markets going to react? And of course, I wish we had a crystal ball, but we followed our own advice in thinking long term. And if you look at some of the advice that Brent Chudy, who's our investment strategist, that he's talking on some of the major networks every single week. He's putting out the white papers. So we had to follow that advice with our own clients and as individuals, to really not overreact, because that would have hurt our advisors. And you've seen what the stock market has done, especially with some of the technology stocks that are out there today. On our risk side, again, I mentioned earlier, some people were worried, hey, what if I lose my job? Will there be an impact on my policy? Do I need to cancel my policy? And the beauty of the policy, especially the ones where you're creating cash value in your policy, is if really needed, you can actually borrow against that policy. We've extended the premium. We were able to put a few programs in place for our clients to really having them avoid making the kind of that rash decision to make mistakes and shift what kind of their long-term strategy was going to be in terms of both their investment side as well as their insurance policy side. So we're able to adapt, and a lot of the clients, honestly, I listened to some of the calls that were recorded, because we record everything similar to what we're doing today. Some of the calls coming in, our clients were truly appreciative because they didn't know, right? Again, they're calling in to take care of a specific item, but when you explain the whole picture to them and how they can really avoid taxes, avoid tax penalties, I should say, in just kind of cashing out the policy, what they can do with the policy and so forth, that omni-channel experience, that consultative experience really played very, very well in an environment where people were quick to react in some instances. So great question, Adam.
Thanks. And then one more from George asking, how are you breaking down the silos within Northwestern Mutual? Is there a technology that's helping you do that? And if I could extend the question, I think you sort of talked about the way that people are solving problems. Maybe there's some cultural shift or just part of the existing culture that helps you kind of operate in this environment.
Yeah, a good question, George. So a couple of things. I think technology on its own will not solve it. Technology is going to be definitely an enabler. So we stepped back as we were looking at the multi-year strategy and said, how are we structured today? So, you got a product team, you've got a digital team, you've got a technology team, you've got the operations team, you've got our go-to-market. So we had to change our operating model and how we look at what we're trying to accomplish and how we're delivering on it. It's easy to think of a model where product designs it, technology delivers it, they roll it, put it over the wall and say, okay, distribution, you guys go run with it. So across the board, one of the key horizontal plays really, was also our change management structure. So we hired somebody in 2020, it might have been actually late 2019, that really helped us from a change management perspective, look at how we roll things out, not just externally, but internally. But I would say versus looking at technology as the driver, if you will, we had to look deep into our operating model and how we align across our digital function, our support function, our go-to-market function, as well as our technology function, and align all our other initiatives around it and then we could use technology as a way to communicate, as a way we keep track of where we are.
Thanks. That's it for now.
Great. Thank you, Ian. So circling back to kind of the COVID, in the spirit of not letting any good crisis go to waste, what are some of the leadership lessons I think you would take away from what you've seen so far, experienced so far? You mentioned some of these, putting the underlying digital fabric in place that really allows you to react and respond. You really talked about culture and how important that is in terms of taking care of your employees, especially through trying times. But any other sort of leadership lessons you would share with the group here?
Yeah, I think
learnings from this.
No, great question. I would say the biggest one is kind of our priority, right? Let's make sure that our priority is the health and wellness of our workforce. That's one. Our advisors and their staff across the country. That's kind of part of that. We want to make sure that everybody continues to be healthy. We're not in a rush to just drum up business for the sake of just drumming up business. We're a mutual, right? We're not a public company that has to really worry about the every 90 days in a public market. We really tend to take a longer term approach. So that takes me to, that's the way we manage our financial strength for the long term. And our ability to weather that storm is really key. Our financial strength is really key for that. So the lessons learned is, as you continue to adapt in this environment, we are looking at the next 30, 90 days from an operational perspective. We're focused on driving that operational efficiency because no one really knows what the market's going to do, whether there's going to be a continued wave. Unfortunately, we all watch the news. We've seen the increase in cases or positive cases. So we continue to look at ways in the next 30, 90 days where operational efficiency, our organization, the way that we can ensure that our employees and our staff is really focused on the most value-added work. So we're looking to deprioritize projects that are competing for resources that can help in our digital journey and that diminish the strategic focus on our priorities. That way our talent can continue to focus on the work that matters the most. I think the most important business lesson is the importance of planning ahead, right? The ability to condition and adapt. I think that's where I go back to putting your best team on the front lines and you working with them and supporting them and just get out of the way. Let them do the work and get out of the way because they're going to be the ones that figure out the best. So maintaining that organizational alignment, making sure that the priorities are aligned. Again, I mentioned that operating model. And understanding that, yes, there may be some great new things coming up down the pike, but focusing your teams on what is key in helping ensure that as we get out on the brighter side of COVID, that you haven't missed a beat and you can hit the ground running. I would say those are the priorities that we would focus on and the leadership lessons that we're focused on.
Great. Awesome, thanks. So just pivoting to looking into the future crystal ball, if you will, how do you think the financial services industry as a whole is going to get impacted by this? And, what do you see some key emerging trends as a result of this going forward?
I think a couple of things. Sometimes I do still walk into my financial institution. It's probably a couple of times a year when I'm trying to take cash out to travel internationally, so I'm not using an ATM. And I love walking in there, and without fail, I see somebody that's sitting in the branch, reading a paper, having a cup of coffee, and thinking, man, I can't remember the last time I did that. I probably need to retire to get to that. So I think digital is going to continue to drive the change and shift in mindset. If I look at what our clients are asking for, and that's something actually I picked up, in my days at Alibaba as well, is let me run my financial life in a centralized manner. Don't let me log into too many things that don't talk to each other. Let me have that visibility into where I'm headed, not just necessarily from a retirement, really from a financial security perspective, and give me the assurance that I'm on the right track. So I think financial institutions will continue to adopt and roll out digital technologies. I think that, but just that on its own is not going to be sufficient. Occasionally, you need that advice from your financial advisor, whether it's through a financial institution or companies like Northwestern Mutual. The joke that we make internally is that, with COVID, I was able to cut my own hair. But luckily, hairdressers were able to open up again, and I had to go fix my hack job. It's no different in a sense than trying to manage my portfolio. A lot of people can do it, but it's not for everybody, especially when you're being distracted and focused on what is more of a priority around family, around job, around your safety. So I think we're going to see a lot of financial institutions, Anisha, really focus on the overall digital well-being of the consumers. We can't also forget on the B2B side how businesses interact with their financial institutions. So using technologies, whether it's around payroll, accounting systems, storage, the ability to run remote, not being able to be next to your server in an office, I think that's going to be impacted as well.
Yeah, that's so true. You mentioned this, I think already alluded to this a little bit, but what's on your agenda next 30, 60, 90 days? You mentioned really maniacally focus on operational efficiency, on prioritization, other things that might be on your radar.
30, 60, 90 days, I just want everybody to be safe.
Safe, yeah,
and I say that seriously. I mean, no, this is not a kidding thing. In Milwaukee, the county, for example, just said everybody's going to be wearing a mask and keeping the social distance. That goes without saying. So I think if I look in the inside out, right? Inside, it's making sure that our teams are continuing to execute, continuing to be safe, really focusing on their families, because that to us is really key. It will impact the way we think about not even 90 days from now when schools will go back in August and September, depending on the school system, is how are our employees and their families adapting to the new norm in their world? I mean, yes, I get it from March until June when schools were over, they had to adapt quickly. So understanding what's happening in our environment for employees is going to be key. Continuing to push that journey on the digital side and listening to our clients as well as our field in what's working and what's not, and the way we distribute our policies and the way we do our healthcare questionnaires. We had set a goal in the beginning of the year for adoption rates. You can imagine we've exceeded that goal, but that doesn't mean we're going to sit back and put our feet up and we're relaxed about it. We're actually trying to figure out, can we do it even better? So working very closely with our cross-functional teams to ensure that while adoption is great, can we find a way to make it more efficient and better? That really is what's key in the next 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah, that's so true. So along those lines, I mean, we've touched on some of this. You mentioned, customer expectations around a more digital experience, and I suspect some of this is going to stick just because it's easier. We may have been accelerated into doing things like e-signatures or electronic delivery of policies. What are some cultural, technical, business, risk mitigation kinds of things that you think are just long-term changes that we're going to see just take hold as a result of this?
Right. I think the way we look at security overall, right? From an InfoSec perspective, and knowing that a lot of people are going digital, there's a focus on kind of not just a hardened shell, if you will, from a security perspective, but also making sure that our partners are secure. We also have to worry about the kind of the social aspect of security, right? So ongoing training is paramount to everything that we do every day, because we do take our clients' data and security very seriously. The way we are working remotely and the way that, and again, I mentioned 6,000 employees. The building behind me, the tall building, is about 4 or 5 years old. The shorter one to my right, I guess, depending where you are on the screen, is over 100 years old. And I don't think we're going to see those full for next probably 6 to 9 months, right? Which is a shame, because I love my colleagues and I miss our really free lunches every single day. So I've learned how to cook even better. But, again, all kidding aside, it's making sure that if you think about what we're doing operationally every day, we've been able to execute. We've been able to show that we will not slow down, and we've been able to deliver on our commitment to our clients and advisors. I think moving forward, leveraging the tools, whether it's around whiteboarding, collaboration tools, to continue to drive that innovation is really where we have to double down and make sure that what we were used to in the past, where we can all get in a room and create something, that has changed and will continue to change. So we want to cater to the teams that are helping us drive that innovation and go forward roadmap to be able to interact and work all together.
That's great. So I know we're coming on top of the hour, so I'm going to ask one final question. What would be your advice for other C-level exec peers? Just given your perspective in your role, what advice would you give?
I would say, in McKinsey's rule of 3, do 3 things, right? Number 1, obviously keep your employees safe. Number 2, make sure that the C-level is aligned. And this is something that we took very, very seriously. So until about 2 weeks ago, John Schlifsky, our CEO, and all the directs, we were meeting on a daily basis. Now we're meeting 3 times a week to ensure that we're keeping an ear to what's happening, what we're hearing from our teams, and that the execution aspect of our strategy has not shifted and is not kind of getting derailed. And number 3, and I wouldn't say it necessarily in that order, truly listening to your teams, right? Be able to adapt and listen to your teams, because they are the ones that are really in tune with what's happening on the ground, and are also listening to your clients, your advisors, depending on your distribution. Take that feedback, distill it, support them, and guide them. But that would be my 3 things that I'd pass on.
Great. Well, that's great advice. Thank you so much. You did promise me a very engaging conversation, and it was, but I'm going to ping Ian here to see, do we have any additional questions, Ian?
Yeah, I think if we could just end with one final question, taking some of the questions from Brian here and sort of putting them together. He's asking about kind of the prevalence or maybe future increased use of things like chatbots and unified search, and thinking about the digital customer experience and how you're engaging with people between your your financial advisors and what you might be doing through your various channels, online, mobile, etc. So maybe you could just speak to that and kind of where you might be putting some of your investments or effort.
Can we make sure Brian isn't working for NM and listening to our roadmap? Again, Brian, another good question, because again, part of the strategy isn't necessarily to just roll things out. Really looking across that experience, and we take that again very seriously on the digital side, because it's a combination of chatbots, it's a combination of our IVR, it's a combination of how does that tie all together when somebody actually gets to an advisor. Am I going to have to answer the same questions again? And by the way, the same is true between our field and our clients. So we work very closely on those tools with the back office within our advisor offices to ensure that we understand when somebody dials in, kind of where they are in their life cycle. So all these, if you think about it as a kind of a desktop of the future, that's how we're thinking about it. Are we there yet? No, absolutely not. But we continue to enhance it along the way, especially as, from a technology perspective, we're pushing hard the last, 3 to 5 years. So some of these tools are in that cycle of, okay, we've implemented, now we're learning. Others are, can we fill a gap with something else? So depending on where we are. But I would say the overall theme and message is going to be around, can they all talk to each other? Can we make sure that if you're using a chat box, that this is something that you're expecting the right answer, right? You're not repeating the same thing and getting kind of junk in and junk out, basically. So great question. We're still on that journey. I feel pretty confident about what the teams are doing. But again, it's a continuous journey and you have to adapt along the way.
That's great. And I think that concludes the questions from the audience. And I'd just like to thank you, Souheil and Anisha, for having this conversation and for kind of giving us all this insight through this Work Unleashed conversation. It's part of a series, as we've mentioned. And so thank you again. And I just want to close and mention that we have one more in the series for this season coming up in a couple of weeks. Vicky Cole from Warner Media will be sharing her story on July 30th. So look out for more information on that. And we look forward to seeing all of you again in the near future, perhaps at BoxWorks in September 17th. And then we'll be having more of these conversations at BoxWorks. So stay tuned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.